everybody, welcome to this week's bonus podcast, which is another character profile. I'm sorry, we've done 2 weeks in a row. Hope you can forgive us. This is a classic character profile, though, of Doreen Lostock. I am Michael.
I'm Gemma.
I just thought we'd better say that. We start the episode with that. And yeah, we got a real proper old school Corrie character who was in and out of the show in its very early years this year, haven't we? This is I feel like, I was saying to you the other day, that I feel like we've gone... This is what some character profiles used to feel like, where we used to read and talk about characters that we don't really have great knowledge of.
But we know everything about her now. We watched an episode with her in it last night. So
we did. We refreshed our memory.
We've done our homework.
Yes, I've been through Corriepedia. I've written. Excuse me. I've written a load of notes. I've read all about her. So we're just going to regurgitate what we found out about Doreen and maybe talk about what we kind of thought about her from seeing her last night. I mean, we have seen ones before, haven't we? When we were watching the 60s episodes a couple of years ago, we must have seen her in a few episodes. But because she was a very not necessarily a background character either, but she was never like a major character in the show, was she?
How many episodes did originally get commissioned?
Like, I can't remember whether it was 12 or 13.
Did he write them all? So she was introduced in episode 12.
Yeah.
So I presume that she was always part of the plan.
Maybe, but I don't know whether, as they got close to that episode 12
writing.
Deadline, we need more characters.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not really sure about it.
I also don't know, and somebody I'm sure can tell us, at what point during the production of these 12 episodes did they commission more?
Yeah, no, I can't remember. I'm sure I've read it at some point, but I don't know. But yeah, Doreen came in episode 12, which was the 18th of January 1961, and springboarded the show onto its future greatness, I guess. Maybe it's thanks to Doreen that we're still here 62 years later, I don't know. But yeah, she was she was a bit of a ditz, this character, and then this is double ditz, isn't it? Because we did Emma last week as a character profile, so we're kind of be comparing and contrasting 2022 bimbo to 1961 bimbo, I suppose. But Gemma, just give us her vital statistics first, then we'll get cracking properly.
She was born on the 1st of February 1941. She had a brother and a sister. Don't ask any more questions.
No, she just did. She
first appeared on the 18th of January 1961, so she was a 19-year-old then.
Yeah, maybe.
With maths.
Good maths then.
It is maths, isn't it? She was born on the 1st of February 1941.
Yeah, you're right. Thank
you. She last appeared on the 2nd of October 1963, and she was in 45 episodes, and she was played by Angela Crowe.
Yeah, now one of the reasons that we've chosen to do this episode this week is, if you remember from the podcast a few weeks ago, Angela Crowe's death was reported just a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? I think she died early March, and it kind of made its way into the Corrie fandom a couple of weeks ago, so I thought it would be a good idea to pay tribute to the character and find out a little bit about her, because I think that she's definitely a character that not many Coronation Street fans would know about. I mean, just from what we've seen of her, did you quite enjoy a bit of Doreen Lostock?
I thought she was kind of fun. She's vivacious. She was bubble-headed. She was trendy, but she didn't really understand. Like, she was super in. Like, the episode we saw was a party episode where she was preparing to have lots of people around, and she didn't really. She was kind of a bit like Hilda Ogden, where she knew what the trends were, but she'd never done any of them before. And so she was just kind of trying to be impressive and do the right, do the latest cool thing, without really knowing how to achieve it, and just reading it in a magazine. So I can imagine
she was making her fondue, wasn't she?
Sort of opening one of these old kind of vintage copies of like Women's Own or whatever, the magazines that I like collecting vintage magazines, and sort of opening it and being really excited by all the pictures and like the dinner party spreads, and like reading what's the best thing to prepare for a party. And I think that really is a universal thing that a lot of people can relate to, wanting to be cool and hearing about a new latest fad and not really knowing what the hell to do about it, and then just serving sausage rolls.
She was also a rare glimpse into the look of the youth of the early 1960s in those episodes, wasn't she? I mean, we know that Lucille Hewitt was the young teenager that was, she was, 12, 13 maybe at the beginning of the show. Yeah,
she was a young
So
teen.
Lucille was that much older than that.
Hang on, who's Lucille?
Sorry, Doreen was that much older than that. She was, she was,
well,
she was,
she was becoming a woman.
Yeah.
And she was sort of edging out of teendom.
Yeah, I
right
guess
at the time when youth culture was really taking off as a thing.
And teenagers were a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you also at the time had the likes of Dennis Tanner, Linda Chevesky, Sheila Birtles, that were, I suppose, of similar ages.
There were lots of sort of young people on the show.
Jed Stone came later.
Lucille Hewitt was a sort of special case because
she was the child.
Yeah, she grew through into experiencing all the different things that a kid would experience growing up.
But I really quite enjoyed watching her, and I couldn't remember a whole lot about when we'd seen her a couple of years ago, because she was very much a side character, a bit of a background character, or she would maybe be in one episode and then we'd see her again 4 or 5 episodes later or so. But definitely from watching that episode again last night, it did make me very interested to maybe revisit some of the earlier 60s episodes and see her again. So Angela Crowe herself, the actress, apparently started her acting career skiving off school to appear in a touring production of Jane Eyre, and I just love back in the day you could do that. It's just skive off school. Nobody did anybody care back in those days? I don't know, but she wanted to be an actress, so that's what she did. It's like running away to join the circus, isn't it? She ended up going to RADA, during which time she won.
Oh, RADA.
I know, very fancy. She won various awards there. She won the Gilbert Award for comedy. And I can definitely see
she's got great timing.
Great comic
Yep.
chops there. The Tree Award for drama, the Emile Littler Award for outstanding talent. So they really did see some huge potential in Angela Crowe right from the very start. And then before Corrie, she ended up playing the lead in numerous theatre productions and TV shows. All before getting that job at Corrie at a fairly young age. I was reading some of her the obituaries of Angela Crowe a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that stood out to me the most there is a couple of them were saying that Ecky Thump was her catchphrase, and I was waiting on the episode that we saw last night for her to say it, and unfortunately she didn't. But as Ecky Thump is one of our podcast awards that we do every year, I think that's kind of cool that she was not the originator of the phrase, but she had that as a catchphrase. She
popularised it in the North
back in 1961. But she did say Bayek, I think, last night, or Ek or something. So getting close there. The other interesting thing about this character, about her origins, was that from the very start she didn't actually have a name. So she and Sheila were originally known as the Barm Cake Girls, because they just used to be seen hanging around outside the corner shop, going in there to buy their sandwiches, because they were factory workers at the Elliston's Raincoat Factory. And
so she wasn't actually part of like the 12 episode or 13 episode like pitch of like.
I don't.
So she was just like hired as a background, and then somebody probably went.
Well, maybe. I think they. I just think they were just experimenting back in those days, weren't they? And so they would
hire her as a background artist, and then go, maybe we need her. Maybe we need somebody like her. Why don't we just use her?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you get your factory girls or maybe not so much these days. More in the 70s to the early 2000s, where you'd have characters that were just true. Factory workers basically, and not much else, or a little bit. Sometimes like Kelly Crabtree would evolve into more of a character, which I think Doreen did.
Forget that Bette Lynch, was a throwaway part, coming in as a factory girl, asking Annie if she sold pies in the pub. Yeah,
that's true. So she did. She started off just kind of hanging around there, and it's quite funny to picture it, because that was right by the viaduct, which was the painted viaduct with the wall and the post box and everything. So Sheila Birtles and Glynis, who was a character for 5 episodes. She started in episode 8, did Glynis, but for whatever reason things didn't work out for her. I think Sheila also started in episode 8. Doreen came later, but then the friendship that blossomed between Doreen Lostock and Sheila Birtles was what then kind of went on to form one of the very early friendships on the programme that was later repeated for like Gail and Susie Birchall, or Gail and who was the other friend that she had? Trisha Hopkins, and what was that?
Sorry, it's the cat.
And if definitely, the cat has come to join us again.
She's not commit. She wants to lay down, but she's not committing herself.
No, she's a
She's
wire
sort of in a
between
weird,
her legs at the
hovery
moment. Yeah, see what she does there.
crouch.
So yeah, the original young, trendy friends who lived together above the corner shot flat. And although they didn't stay for long, they certainly started a legacy on Coronation Street.
It does show that even in its very early stages, Coronation Street would definitely had its eye on the youth and trying to court younger viewers.
Yeah, it's all very well having your Annie Walkers and your Ena Sharples, because those are the people like Tony Warren's mum or grandma, or the women that he had round his house.
Yeah.
But you did have to think of your audience, because Tony Warren himself was very young. He was in his early 20s, wasn't he, when he came up with Coronation Street? So they've certainly had the whole spectrum of age thanks to characters like this. We don't know a whole lot, I don't think, about Doreen's backstory before the show started. We know she was educated at Bessie Street School. She came to Coronation Street to work at Elliston's Raincoat Factory. She had a relationship with Billy Walker before the show started.
So just remind everyone, Billy Walker is Annie
Walker's,
and
wayward son.
Annie and Jack's son.
Yeah. But he had to leave when he's called up for national service. So this was kind of the backstory that was filled in later, which I didn't realise before I was watching this. So there's quite a bit that I learned about her while I was researching her the other day. So this is what Doreen got up to on the street, and I'm going to start off with 1961. So one of the first things that we saw her doing was trying to catch the attention of a plumber who was hanging around, Plumber Joe, who was hanging around that end of the street, the corner shop end of the street, but he only had eyes for Christine Hardman.
Same.
And but Doreen was was chasing after him, and he ended up palming her off with tickets to a jazz gig so that to get him out of his hair. Gemma does not like jazz. That wouldn't work on
jazz.
Would that if he gave you tickets to a jazz gig, would that make you kind of give up on him completely, or did you say thanks for that?
If you think this is an appropriate thing for me to go to, then I'm afraid we're on completely different levels. Like, why don't you invite... Jazz is like the equivalent of slam poetry. I don't want to just hear you making stuff up as you go along.
So later...
Make up a song and then sing it to me. Don't expect me to sit there while you work out the fine details.
I think that you think about it more deeply than Doreen would, to be honest. I think she just like having her own, having a bop.
Sounds mega fancy.
So Billy Walker came back from the army at sort of early 1961, and he started seeing Doreen again, like striking up that relationship. Annie Walker didn't approve of this.
Can't believe it.
I know. She had very high standards for the girls that her son would be stepping out with, and Doreen, the airhead, didn't quite meet them.
This was the joke all along with Annie, that she thought she was a cut above everybody else, but she really wasn't. She lived on the same street as everybody else.
And she had been a factory girl herself back in the day, hadn't she, Annie? The Doreen, however, was still sweet on Joe a little bit. And she spends first half of 1961 irritating Christine when she's trying to flirt with him. Eventually, even she's able to talk Christine out of marrying Joe the plumber. So she does quite a good job there.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, another great thing about Doreen, which I didn't realise before, is that she had numerous jobs. She was obviously working at the factory, mainly at the beginning. But she also worked at a cafe on Rosamond Street. And I don't know whether this is the cafe that eventually turned into Jim's Cafe in the 70s and 80s. But anyway, it was... run by a woman called Sylvia Snape, who was played by acting legend Patricia Routledge. Now she's a bit of a from Keeping Up Appearances. She was a Hyacinth Bouquet in Keeping Up Appearances, which my claim to fame was filmed in the village that I grew up in. So I think that's really cool. Now, Sylvia Snape was only in it for... I don't even know whether she got into double digits, to be honest, but I'd really be interested in seeing some of those old episodes with a young Patricia Routledge, because I can only imagine her as being an older middle-aged woman.
I know, yeah. What does a young Patricia Routledge look like?
Yeah, there is a picture of her on Corriepedia, but I'd love to actually see her in action. I think Patricia Routledge is still going as well, which is crazy, because she always seemed like such an old lady to me when I was young watching Keeping Up Appearances.
She's like the British version of Julia Child, but she can't cook.
Yeah, basically. Anyway, so she's
in that they're not at all similar.
She gets this extra job in the cafe because she wants to travel the world, so needs all the cash that she can get. So we get an idea about Doreen that although she's got her head in the clouds a lot of the time, she is quite ambitious and she doesn't want to stay stuck in that street. I bet Ken Barlow is seething with Jenna's jealousy at Doreen because he's wanted to get out of that street all his life. It's never quite managed it. 2 years later, she was off.
She's off.
So there was another story. I'd quite like to see this episode actually with her in maybe July 1961. I think I saw where at the factory she gets fed up of the leery foreman there called Harry Pilkington. And if you think about the foreman from Les Mis in that At the End of the Day song, he was a bit like her because he was a bit
he was a bit like him.
Yeah, he was a bit of a reputation for being a bit handsy, a little bit groping of the girls, and she called him a mauler, and she drew kind of a bit of a crowd by standing up to this guy. She also reminded him of how he caused Sheila to leave the factory earlier that year and threatened to sell a story about him having an affair with a canteen supervisor to the papers.
That'll ruin everything.
So she had a bit of fire in her in this episode, didn't she?
Yeah.
But it did get her the sack. I think it was probably a bit of a relief
woman's lot,
her.
innit?
He sacks her, gives her a week's notice and says, right, you can work out the end of the week. And she's like, nope, I'm quitting now. And then she had to stop Billy Walker from sorting him out once he heard of this guy trying to get his hands on his bird. She lost, so she'd gone from that job. Then she lost her job at the cafe later on that summer when the Snapes sold up to Mario Bonatti, who had the not easy job of getting the Weatherfield residents interested in Italian cuisine. So this is Coronation Street's first Italian restaurant, which you saw a little bit of again later in the 2000s with Valandro's.
I was going to say, but is this the place where Jerry and Mavis go?
Oh, I don't know whether it was actually. They went to an Italian restaurant
and they didn't understand what the heck was going on.
That was so fun.
I love that.
I like Italian food is just so normalised now.
Yeah, but think about there are still exotic foods that get introduced in this country where you would go and you would not know what you were really doing or what anything on the menu was. Just because it's Italian, which is so familiar to us, it seems quite funny. But the kind of the experience of going somewhere and being like, I don't know what any of this is, but I hope it tastes nice.
And that episode with Jerry and Mavis was perfect for that, wasn't it? And it seems like from its early days, this particular Italian restaurant found it quite tough because.
But it's also like it's a sort of an example of what it was like to be alive in those times, becoming sort of socially mobile, having a bit more disposable income, people actually being able to eat out and enjoy restaurants, working class people, and how did they react to what they saw. And Coronation Street never set out to be a kind of anthropological study of the working class of the North, but many of the older episodes really do feel a bit like this is, people were watching their experiences mirrored on screen. So these are really honest depictions of the way that people would have reacted to some of the things that were new to them at the time. It
still does go on now. I mean, for us, it was, we had the analogue childhood and the digital future, didn't we? So we saw that leap from,
definitely.
From no internet to internet. Back then, it was the leap from pies to paella.
So the traditional Italian paella.
You know what I just wanted to make it sound good. So apparently Doreen and Sheila Birtles were one of his first customers, and they ended up getting a bit befuddled by the menu and then chickening out and just ordering a cup of coffee instead. I'd quite like to see that.
I would like to see that, yeah.
Then she got a job at Gamma Garments, which is where she stayed for, I think, the whole of the rest of her time on the show, which was the Drapiers, wasn't it?
This was really interesting. This was another sort of, thing of its time.
Yeah.
What's it called? Whatever of its time.
Yeah. So that you could just go and buy
pants
and fabrics.
Well, yeah, they sold hosiery and a millinery, and you could buy fabric to make clothes or buy ready-made clothes.
Yeah, and so she was working there with Emily Nugent she was at the time,
Miss
obviously.
Nugent.
Which is always, it's so funny seeing Emily as, a character in her 20s or 30s even. And then the boss there was Mr. Swindley, Leonard Swindley, played by Arthur Lowe. And
another legend.
Totally. And they made such a great trio because, Emily was very quiet and retiring and wouldn't say boo to a goose, and then you got Doreen
conservative and reserved.
Yeah, exactly. Doreen very kind of free and easy and bubbly and ditzy.
And modern and progressive, and she wanted to be fashionable.
Yeah, so very different from Emily. And then you got Mr. Swindley, who was a very stuffy, pompous...
Yeah, definitely.
Arthur Lowe is best known, obviously, for Captain Mannering in... Dad's Army, and he would be going, "Oh, stupid boy," to Pike, and I can imagine him thinking or even saying that to Doreen. And from what we've seen, he really did treat his workers like they were lesser. It's lesser than him.
Yeah, it's all like chalk and cheese here because it's a clothes shop, and you've got two people who are a bit too conservative to really understand what modern youth really want out of a clothes shop, but also you've got Doreen here who knows what the fashions are, but the people that live in Coronation Street don't necessarily want, thigh-high boots and...
Well, Elsie Tanner wouldn't say no to that.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, on the whole. So they made a really great... It's like an odd couple, but there's three of them.
An odd trio.
An odd trio, those three were. So... She also got a job later in the year at the Rovers as a barmaid, £1 more a week than she'd been earning. But she asked for it on Friday lunchtime so she could go off on Friday afternoons and have shopping time there.
I miss being young and going shopping.
And then the final episode that she was in 1961 was like November or something, and that was the High Noon episode, the really famous one with the confrontation between Ina and Elsie. But Doreen's... her role in that episode was accidentally breaking one of Annie's heirloom plates, the willow pattern plate. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I really do. That's a really
and Annie's
famous
away
episode.
for the episode. Then she comes back and totally lays into her husband Jack for breaking her plate, and then either Doreen fesses up or Jack says it was Doreen, and Annie just completely switches to be like, oh, never mind, I didn't like it anyway, which is so funny. So having a wife having a massive go at the husband just for no particular reason.
You like this one because I often complain that you break things, don't you? And you just kind of think this shows that she's only having a go at him because she's
Women,
a horrible old
Come
cow.
on, lads,
Rather than the fact that she spent a long time selecting each and every individual plate that is residing in the house.
If you thought that I broke a plate, you'd have a go at me. But then if I said, but it was Abby that did it actually, she knocked it, you'd be like, oh, don't worry, Abby.
I wouldn't. I'd say, well, it doesn't make any difference, is it? Because it's broken. What are you going to do about it?
Now, that was the last episode that Doreen starred in 1961, and it was actually the last time that we saw her for, I'm going to say, 7 months on the show, because that was when the Equity Actors Strike happened, which was a dispute between Equity, the acting union, are they? Is that right?
Yeah.
Shrugging of the shoulders, and ITV, because Equity thought, well, these actors need to be paid more. When they signed up for this show, and TV in general, TV was still very young, and they didn't realise what a massive industry it had become. And just in the short years, from the beginning of TV to now the early 60s, these actors are going from the stage to becoming household names for millions of people up and down the country.
Unprecedented fame.
Yeah, absolutely. And the wages that they were on didn't seem to reflect that. So they said to all their... And you had to be in Equity, basically, in these days, I think. They were saying, right...
Well, you didn't, because there were still some people that were in the show that
No, but they hadn't signed their contract. So Equity told everybody, right, don't anybody sign any more contracts now until we've solved this problem. But there were still 14 actors on Coronation Street who had only just... sign their contracts, so they had to stay on.
I always just wonder what was going on with that, whether they were scabs or not.
No.
I know that you can't... I don't know about the UK, but in America, it's like a bit of a racket, isn't it? You have to be in a union to get a job working in any significant...
I don't know.
You do.
Okay.
But once you get your foot in the door, that's it.
Yeah, so you got your 14 core cast members holding the show together for a good 6-7 months. Crazy. And it's when they had to like bring in the animals or trying to get children involved, and they tried to get children to be...
we know that Annie Jack, who was the...
Dennis Tanner was still there.
I don't know who else was
Ina
involved.
was there, I think.
There were quite a lot of...
So some of the ones that were left were big stars.
Because
it wasn't like you were left with
those contracts.
Yeah, exactly. But no Doreen. And yeah, what I was saying about some of the children, they would like get the children to try and pose as postmen and everything, which I think in the end it kind of got back to the people hiring them and saying, no, you can't really do that. They're just children. Give them children's roles.
Isn't this what happened with Thunderbirds?
What?
A very ignorant memory seems to recall that there was some kind of scandal with Thunderbirds where, because it was all puppets, but then when sometimes they had a close-up of somebody like picking up a glass or, looking at their watch or something, they just used people that were on set, like, oh, you're not doing anything, come and hold your watch. And then they got in massive trouble because they had to have actual actors, like, you need a professional actor to go, the time is noon.
That's why, as fun as it would be, I don't think you're going to be seeing us on Coronation Street anytime.
You can't just
say, oh, go on, give Michael a job or a job. No.
I know, but lots of people say it'd be quite fun if we were allowed to do that, but
even like a walk-on part
there's
in the
a lot more
background.
involved to it. You have to, it's a profession, you have to take it seriously. It's not just a silly funny thing to do for 5 minutes.
Doreen disappeared and was returned to the show in early June of 1962. Gemma, I'm going to pass over to you. Tell us what was going on with old Doreen in the second half of 1962.
Well, she's all over the place, isn't she? Because now she's been Gamma Garments, she's been a barmaid, now she gets a job in the grocer's shop in Rosamond Street.
She's still at Gamma Garments. Yeah. She's a bit. I think she's a bit. It sounds a bit like Sean, just like
flitting
many
about.
jobs at once. Yep. To try and get the cash to get out of the street.
I'm getting away from here.
Unlike Sean, who's still hanging on in there.
He's got dreams, Michael, but
he does.
I don't know what he's doing about them. So she quits soon so she can carry on working at Gamma Garments.
Yeah.
And she has various escapades and mishaps with Emily, like when she sold hankies for some amount of money.
I've written this, but I don't know how to say this. 1/11. Did you just say 1/11? £1.
bob.
I don't know.
3
I
crowns.
don't know what this is. Yeah, she sold some hankies.
She
a
sold
box
them
of
by
hankies
the box.
for the price of one. Yes.
Thanks for stitching me up there. Doreen and Sheila. I know that I wouldn't understand old money, so I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
Halfpenny.
Maybe she didn't work in Gamma Garments in 1961. Maybe I got that wrong. Maybe it was just 1962 that she started there. I don't know.
Doreen and Sheila worry about Sheila after she gets fed up with life, and...
No, they worry about Christine. I've really stitched you up with my notes for 1962.
Why don't you carry on
This is all wrong. Right. So I'm going to make this up as I go along. Doreen and Sheila start getting worried about Christine Hardman because she gets fed up with life. She gets fed up with being wronged by her men, and she threatens to jump off the factory roof. And then she ends up going to move to London with Neil Crossley. But yeah, Neil Crossley. I think I'm doing great. So yeah, Doreen and Sheila are quite important for that. Then they moved into the corner shop flat, which, like I said earlier, is a nice little trope of having the young characters living together to see what kind of young person's escapades they could get up to. And before long, they were annoying Florrie Lindley, the owner of the shop downstairs, with their very loud music. Grr, those kids. Basically, most of the rest of 1962, and a lot of the rest of her time in the show, it seemed, was just about her fancying boys, going out with various lads, really. Although she does end up getting a bit fed up with some other ones and their wandering hands too. She also discovers later that year that Emily Nugent and Mr. Swindley are having a bit of a secret love affair. And then Jerry Booth comes on the scene, who was this lovely, shy... how would you describe Jerry?
He was just a decent, hard-working, shy.
He wasn't a lad, was he? But he was a builder, and he was very hard-working. But they spend a lot of time.
He was a gentleman.
He was. They end up spending a lot of time teasing him for being shy and kind of just making fun of him, and he ends up eventually snapping and telling Doreen to shut it, and for a while that made her think of him as masterful and manly. And this is where yesterday's episode came in, because Jerry was invited to that party, wasn't he? I don't think he really wanted to go there. He kind of shows up in wearing his fancy tie, and they kind of make fun of him and trying to get him out of the tie, and he's just sitting there looking very nervous at the side of the room, while Doreen and Sheila are putting on their fondue and putting on the music, and everyone's doing the twist. It was so funny. Even Emily herself had a bit of alcohol, didn't she? They persuaded her to have a tot of, I don't know what it was.
Something.
And by the end of the episode, she's twisting the night away herself, and Mr. Swinley comes and crashes the party and can't believe that the usually so sober Emily is let go of her inhibitions. Yeah. 1963 then, so we've already hit Doreen's final year on the show. She's starting to worry that she's going to be made redundant, but as a twist, Mr. Swinley tells Emily that she's the one for the chop because she's the one that earns the most. So Gamma Garments is going through hard times. Eventually, though, he's able to persuade Mr. Papadopoulos, their boss, to take her back. So drama, everybody. Doreen goes on to swerve the affections of Jed Stone because she's just not interested in him. But then she gets set up on a date with him. I think Sheila organises a double date, so she's seeing Jerry at this point. Sheila and Jerry go on a date, and Sheila says, "Oh, Jed, come out for a date with Doreen." So she didn't like that. Then, and I think we watched this episode. There's an episode where Doreen and Emily are both fancying two van drivers who come to the shop. I don't know whether you remember this one. They're saying, well, we're gonna take some of your stock here from Gamma Garments, take it up to head office, but actually they're just a bunch of scammers. They steal all the pants and fabric or whatever it is. And the next day, when the police come round the shop to interview Emily and Doreen about it, they don't really want to say anything or describe the guys because they fancied them and they didn't want them to get caught and get in trouble, which is kind of funny. Do you remember that one?
No.
Oh yeah, I think we watched that one. She goes out with Dennis for a little bit later in the year. Dennis Tanner. She persuades him to take her to the theatre, but then she gets annoyed when he doesn't try anything on with her. So 1 minute she's saying keep your hands to yourself, and then when he doesn't go for a kiss, she's not happy with that. And she says it was like going out with her brother. They're also responsible, Doreen and Sheila, for Walter Potts' stage name of Brett Falcon. Bit of trivia for you there later the year. And there is more dramas at Gamma Garments as well that year because Mr. Swindley is replaced as the manager by Neil Crossley. He ends up...
Isn't he the one that ran off with Christine Hardman?
Maybe. Oh, my note. I did write that there, didn't I? See, I don't know whether you can believe anything that I'm saying tonight. I promise most of this is true, but yeah, no, I think you're right.
Hang on, what's going on?
What? No, it's fine. Yeah,
Neil Crossley.
Yeah.
Christine Harmon's moved to London with Neil Crossley and he comes back.
Oh, no, she didn't. See, this is where I made the mistake earlier. It was Christine Hardman that was on... But it's just too many women that are contemplating suicide. Christine Hardman tried to jump off the roof. I don't know what happened to her in the end.
She was
Sheila Birtles, she later ends up taking pills, doesn't she? Because, Neil Crossley comes... Oh, this is... I apologise for my... badly organised notes on tonight's episode, everyone. I hope you can get something out of this. But anyway, Neil Crossley comes in. He ends up leaving most of the running of the shop to Doreen and Emily, so he's a bad manager. Doreen's also heard bad things about him, and he's a bit of a dodgy guy, but he turns out he's a bit of a charmer. But they soon discover that he starts stealing from the till and going to the betting shop, and is a little bit worried because Sheila's been dating him in secret. This is when Sheila Birtles almost gets driven to suicide because Neil starts treating her badly as well. She also owes a load of people money. Doreen's sadly oblivious just to how bad her situation is in, kind of mentally speaking. So Sheila ends up taking a load of pills. And this was the episode when Sheila was supposed to have committed suicide, but when the word got out to the viewers that was going to happen, they kind of were up in arms, weren't they? And Coronation Street had to change the plot at the last minute and have Dennis Tanner rescue her. Anyway, Sheila then goes off. Maybe she goes off with Neil. I don't know. By the end of the year, anyway, Leonard Swindley's returned to the shop. Things pretty much go back to normal. But because Sheila has left the street, she's gone to live with her parents actually. Doreen realises that there's not much keeping me here. She tries to get Myra Booth to stay with her in her flat, gets turned down, and so she ends up leaving Weatherfield to join the Women's Royal Army Corps in October. She has a bit of a goodbye party. Mr. Swindley says some nice kind words to her, which is kind of a surprise to Doreen because she's always slagged him off. And that's the last that we see of Doreen Lostock. So sad, Gemma.
Is it?
Well, maybe.
She gets talked about.
She does. I mean, Sheila Birtles comes back to the street a few years later, like 1966, I think, and tells people that the last time she heard from Doreen, she had a boyfriend, a tank driver boyfriend, and she was doing all right. But then, by the time Sheila comes again onto Coronation Street, Sheila, she's lost touch with Doreen, so nobody knows what happened to her in the end.
Nobody knows.
She's gone to travel the world. And that's it. She did appear one more time in the show, but in a flashback in episode 957, which was shown in February 1970. Elsie Tanner has a flashback of a scene from 1962 where Doreen appears, so she did actually get a name on the credits for that one. But no, that was it. And of leaving Coronation Street, the actress said, I wanted to do Ibsen and Chekhov. I'd had to turn down 2 meaty parts in the new wave films, and it was an exciting time of change in the theatre. So she basically just wanted to go off and do
other things,
a whole load of stuff, which she did because her TV career continued for another 40 or 50 years or so after Coronation Street, including a role in Pardon the Expression, which was a Corrie spin-off starring Leonard Swindley, wasn't it? And she didn't play Doreen Lostock in that. She was another character called Miss Clapper, so that must have been a bit weird for the actors that one of them was playing the character that they played on Coronation Street and the other one was playing somebody different. But most of the roles that Angela went on to do were one-off. She didn't stay in the same programme for very long. She was in Grange Hill for 8 episodes, quite funnily called in the role of a character called Mrs. Birtles. So she was friends with Sheila Birtles on Coronation Street. She was Mrs. Birtles in Grange Hill. That was only 8 episodes though. But yeah, she was just in single episode things for most of the rest of her career. She did a load of theatre as well. According to her IMDb page, her last appearance was playing a character called Mrs. Hastings in the show Doomwatch, and it gives that in 2016. But doing a little bit of digging for that, this was something that was in the early 1970s, but was only released on DVD in 2016, because even though it was filmed in the 1970s, it was unbroadcast back then. Possibly, and I don't think anybody knows the true history of this, was that the episode contained stock news footage of a public execution. And so they decided not to show it in the 70s, and it took another 45 years for it to get its outing on DVD. The other theory was that the episode satirised Mary Whitehouse, Cliff Richard and Lord Langford, and so they thought it would maybe be best not to show it. But in any case, that was the very last thing that you could see Angela Crowe in, even though it was filmed.
Most recent thing.
Yeah, even though it was filmed many, many years beforehand. But she ended up retiring to West Yorkshire.
But when was her actual final TV appearance?
Oh, the last time she was actually on TV was in 2005 in an episode of The Royal. Oh. And then she retired to West Yorkshire. She was a keen member of the Bronte Society, apparently, and was writing books about all this and that. And she was giving talks about the Bronte family. There was a book called Miss Brandwell's Companion in 2007 that she published.
And this, of course, is why they called the chicken Charlotte Bronte.
Oh yes,
in Coronation Street.
It was
no,
secretly
not necessarily, but
Doreen
would it be
Lostock.
nice if it was?
And that was it. So she lived out the rest of her days in West Yorkshire before dying earlier this year on the 3rd of March. So that's it. That is the story, and I just feel pretty bad that I maybe got some of these get bits of information wrong
we should
in and
just
out
redo
of
this whole
order.
thing.
No, it's fine. It's pretty much. You can read about it online. Pretty much that is the story of Doreen Lostock. She was a fun factory girl.
She was a
ditzy,
fun, cool
bubbly,
60s chick.
trendy.
Full of dreams and hopes, and unlike Ken Barlow, she actually went to pursue them.
Yes, she did. She ended up in the army. And so
That's
good
how
on,
you
good on
chase
her.
your dreams.
But I know we're still watching the late 2000s episodes at the moment, and hopefully we can go back to the 60s. But I think now that I've read all this about Doreen, I'd be very interested to actually see her more in action and maybe watch a series of episodes of her. And she seems kind of fun.
Yeah, she is. She's definitely fun.
Yeah, it just goes to show you don't need to be an Elsie Tanner or an Ena Sharples or an Annie Walker or a Hilda Ogden your show needs big characters like that, but you also need your supporting characters as well, don't you? Because that's what Coronation Street's about the all walks of life.
Yeah.
I think we're done. Should we say we're done?
We're done.
That is it, everybody. A kind of all right history of Doreen Lostock, but as you can probably tell, we don't know much about her because we haven't seen it. But if anybody listening has got fond memories of Doreen, do please write in and let us know what's your favourite part about her and why did you enjoy her as a character. But I think we will finish there. Write to us at conversationstreet@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all that if you haven't done so yet. And we will be back this weekend with our thoughts on the week's episodes on ITV. So goodbye from me, Michael, and
Bye.
goodbye from Gemma. Goodbye.